Grand Rising, Grand Rising. Broadcasting this rising from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm here on the road, had to get a couple of things situated so we can get these stories kicked off this AM. First, have a follow-up coming through that we went through from last week about the lawsuit dealing with the Creek Indian Nation and the so-called black freedmen fighting to get their rights. That was awarded to them years ago by Birthright Back. This article starts as Johnny Mae Austin and her grandson, Demario Solomon Simons, can tell you everything about their ancestry. They can go back as far as 1810, the year Solomon Simons' great-great-great-grandfather Kyle Tom was born. With undeniable pride, they recount the man's feats of bravery during the Civil War and his leadership within Oklahoma's Creek population. In fact, they are also determined to let the world know exactly who Kyle Tom was. That they're suing the Creek Nation to make sure his descendants aren't forgotten. Solomon Simmons and his grandfather are black, but they argue they are also Creek and they're fighting to reclaim their identity. In 1979, a new tribal constitution made it more difficult to prove Creek ancestry. Black Creeks in particular found it almost impossible to claim the identity of their ancestors, and as a result, thousands lost their Creek citizenship. In August 2018, Solomon Simmons, the lead attorney representing 6 named plaintiffs, including his grandmother, filed a lawsuit against the Muskogee Creek Nation and the Interior Department to fully restore the citizenship of Black Creeks. As a result, a minority group is suing another minority group for inclusion in the indigenous minority group. And to settle this peculiar case, one has to go back nearly 200 years. So Austin, 86, was born in Haskell, Oklahoma. Her grandfather, Jake Simmons, was Creek to the bone. She says Simmons spoke fluent Creek, and Austin chuckles at the memory of him using Creek curse words. When I interviewed her in her northern Tulsa home, she sang me one of the songs her grandfather taught her, also in Creek. Jake Simmons was Kyle Tom's grandson. He, like other black slaves owned by Native Americans, made his quotation mark around that, made his way west on the Trail of Tears. They forced relocation of Native American peoples from Florida to Oklahoma. Some of Kyle Tom's descendants, despite he was ever a slave, some documents say he was initially a Creek slave. Either way, he arrived in Oklahoma in the early 1830s and soon became a pillar of the Black Creek community and a man considerable economic and political stature. Accounts from Kyle Tom's grandchildren describe him as a jet black man of medium build, whose success was measured by his seemingly unlimited supply of cattle. A cultural broker, helped by his English skills and familiarity with the white American culture, Kyle Tom eventually served as the principal chief of Canadian Town, a free black township within the Creek Nation, and also represented the Creek Nation before the Interior Department. Kyle Tom's success was not particularly unique among hard-working Black Creeks in the eastern Oklahoma. On the 18th of November 1910, the Topeka Plain Dealer reported that a large percentage of the Negro population on the eastern side of the state had rich allotments from their Indian citizenships. According to the same article, many of them started out as slaves of the Creeks, but gained freedom through Emancipation Proclamation. The U.S. government compelled Native Americans to sign treaties allowing their former Negro slaves to share in their land inheritance. Baloney. Meaning black former slaves were given plots of land in the Creek community. In Oklahoma in the late 1970s, Austin's routinely received mail from the Creek Nation. The mail typically included news, ballots for voting on tribal matters, and checks for shares of the revenue from the land and cattle dealings. That mail was a connection to an identity Austin always thought was true. It's just who I was, she said, until the mail suddenly stopped in 1979. This was the result of a 1976 federal lawsuit during which the Creek had managed to shake off some of the paternalistic reach of the U.S. government. Creeks then voted to reconstitute citizenship parameters, kicking out many blacks who had enjoyed citizenship since 1866. According to Dr. Daniel Littlefield on the Sequoia National Research Center, there's a strong element of we are a tribe, Indians, to that decision. So I think it was probably just out of racism that they motivated those people to remove black people from including in the nation. Citizenship parameters were now limited to those who could find ancestors registered on the 1906 Dawes Rolls, a special federal census that defined Native Americans according to a vague principle of blood quantum. Without the genealogical testing, this is readily accessible now. The Dawes Rolls, based on interviews and eyeballing of people ancestry, yielded less than precise results. Austin recalls a family story about her grandparents. One who looked very dark was assumed not to have Creek ancestry, and another whose skin tone was very light was assumed to be Creek. But both were equally Creek. Today, if you want Creek citizenship, you have to find a direct lineage to a person on that roll. Nathan Wilson on the Creek Citizen Office says, Austin can't trace her direct lineage to the Creek by blood list on that roll, which the Citizenship Office uses for validating citizenship, but her family can be found on the Creek Freedmen list of Dawes Rolls, coinciding their own and their ancestors' blackness nullified the Creek by blood status. Instead, the case rests on the 1866 treaty between the U.S. government and the Creek Nation, which makes plain that the nation's thoughts of citizenship. Quotations. There are among the Creek's many persons, it says, of African descent in quotation. The treaty notes and lists Cal Tom as an official delegate of the Creeks. The treaty states that the person lawfully residing in said Creek country, or even those who temporarily left, as well as their descendants, may return within 1 year from the ratification of this treaty, as can their descendants, and such others of the same race, as may be permitted by the laws of the said nations to settle within the limits of the jurisdiction of the Creek Nation as citizens. All descendants the treaty adds shall have and enjoy all rights and privileges of native citizens, and the laws of said nation shall be equally by and upon and give equal protection to all such persons and all others, or whosoever race or color, who may be adopted as citizens or members of said tribe. Solomon Simmons said the Creek Nation is not a race, it's a political entity, and they've got obligations. His main claim is that the treaty is still good law and has been abrogated. He anticipated the Creek Nation's arguments. They're going to say they have a right to determine who are citizens. Technically, he agreed. I believe that is your right to determine citizenship like any other sovereign nation. But just like any other sovereign nation, not a race, you, the Creek, signed the treaty. This isn't Solomon Simmons' first legal battle with the Creek Nation in the early 2000s. He tried two cases somewhat similar to the one he filed this summer. But back then, he did so within the Creek Nation's judicial system with two other descendants of Black Creeks, Ron Graham and Fred Johnson. As his clients after several bouts in the Creek National judicial system, Solomon Simmons lost the case. The setback hasn't stopped him. As he pushed forward with his case, he follows in the footsteps of two earlier activists, Rhonda Grayson and Sharon Levy. Both are relative, unassuming women and trailblazing activists for citizenship rights of Black Creeks. Grayson, a financial manager of a delivery and repair service, grew up partially on the country roads, Weewaka, Oklahoma, where her great-grandmother, America Chowie, lived. Chowie only spoke the Creek language. She only attended the Indian church. Grayson told me as she stared at the pictures, rubbing her hands along the glossy laminated frame. She was 90 when we were kicked out the nation. Dang. As a young person, Grayson didn't know about her family's expulsion from the nation. It was only when she talked with her grandmother that she decided to start. Doing my own research in the early 2000s by just going to Oklahoma History Center. She wondered why my mother, my aunts, no one was enrolled in the tribe until someone at the History Center told me that my family were on Creek Freedman rolls. Lindsay, a retired hospital manager, recalled her mother telling her of her ancestor, Lugus Tatuar Perryman, a black man who served as principal chief of the Creek Nation from 1887 to 1895. She didn't realize she was a Black Creek member until 1979, because the distinction did not have much meaning before then. For Lindsay and her mother, she was Creek first. When her official Creek mail stopped coming, my mother called the Creek Nation, and they told her and my grandmother that they were freedmen and weren't entitled to any more checks, Lindsay said. Lindsay showed me a 1980 letter from the Department of the Interior Bureau of Indian Affairs, which only affirmed what the nation told her mother. Despite numerous denied citizenship applications, Lindsay holds fast to something her mother told her. Don't forget your heritage. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. She and Grayson joined forces with other Creek descendants in 2012 to file for recognition, host national conferences, and create a documentary currently in development on the history of the Creek Freedmen. Now, as named plaintiffs in the Solomon Simmons lawsuit, their motivation is clear. They want visibility. We are left out of the Oklahoma history, Grayson said. It is a missing piece of history, and it is a valuable piece of history. Oklahoma history can't be history without the Creek Freedmen. According to Elena Roberts of the University of Pittsburgh, Native American nations have always had this fear, and a valid fear that when they accept black people as part of their tribe, they are seen as not Indian first. Robert explains that Indianness is self-imposed as well as imposed from the outside. These nations have their own sense of who they are based on their culture and their traditions that have retained, but also by the way they are legally recognized either by the state or federal government. This legal recognition, which often meant the unfair takeover of settled land, represents an imposition from outsiders, white outsiders, as to how much culture they're retaining. In fact, in the minutes of our 1977 Quarterly Creek Nation Council meeting, the then Principal Chief, Claude Cox, expressed his concerns with the former 1866 Treaty and Associated Constitution of 1867. When you go back to the old Constitution, you are licked before you start because it doesn't talk about Indians, it talks about citizens, he told the council, referring explicitly to the black districts within the Creek community. He described his fear of being outnumbered. If we want to keep the Indian in control, we got to take a good look at this thing and get us a constitution that will keep the Creek Indian in control. But this is and isn't just about identity, as identity parameters could be dictated sharing in financial gains. Robert said the actual disenfranchisement of black people by the Creeks and the Cherokee started in the 20th century, coinciding with a time when a lot of tribes had begun to build their economics and make a lot of money. She points this out was precisely the time when many of the nations started to see an influx of enrollment applications. The current Creek Principal Chief, Jamie Floyd, declined to comment, and his press office referred to me to the Nation Citizen Office led by Nathan Wilson. We're an independent agency constitutionally, and we're listed in the Constitution as independent, Wilson told me. But the vagueness of the nation's response shouldn't be read as a dismissal of the importance of citizenship issue. In fact, the Creek Nation is lawyering up. Let's say the LLP, a top Washington, D.C. firm, contacted Solomon Simmons in August on behalf of the Creek Nation. Both the Creek Nation and the Interior Department have filed motions to dismiss on the 5th of October, and the court will respond on the 2nd of November. Creek leaders know that this won't be an easy fight. The Cherokee Nation and Seminole Nation lost in 2017 on similar grounds. I'm going to repeat this. Creek leaders know this won't be an easy fight. The Cherokee Nation and Seminole Nation lost in 2017 on similar grounds. For Solomon Simmons, the case is clear-cut. His message to the Creek Nation: you have to follow the law like everybody else. Footnotes, and since you're here, we have a small favor to ask. More people are reading and supporting our independent investigating reporting than ever before. No, that's something else. All right, that was just a quick catch-up, y'all, on where that story is going so far. They're still fighting, and it looks like they have a good chance of winning the case, and that will make 3 cases won out of the 5 so-called civilized tribes. Y'all chime in and let us know what you think about that deal. Pull up these next stories for y'all get y'all thoughts out in the chat on how y'all feel about that this rising. pulling up a local story since I'm in South Florida. It says, breaking news, 17-foot python in Florida breaks record, park officials say. This rising in Florida, the Everglades, a team of invasive species researchers got more than they bargained for. A 17-foot long python plus 73 developing python eggs. On Friday, Big Cypress National Preserve announced in a post to Facebook that its team of researchers had discovered the largest python ever to be removed from the swamp. The pregnant female weighed 140 pounds. Though presumably some of that was egg weight, they found the record-breaking python using a new and intuitive tracking method, following male pythons on their quest for female mates. Pythons are invasive to Big Cypress, so they preserve resource management staff works with the U.S. Geological Survey to locate and remove breeding pythons from the area. Thousands of Burmese pythons live in the wild all over South Florida, according to a National Park Service. Fact sheep pet owners either release them on purpose when they get too big or by accident when hurricanes sweep through the state. The invasive species are numerous and lethal. They kill animals and birds by squeezing them until they pass out. A 2011 study found that the sightings of some of the python's favorite foods, rabbits, foxes, raccoons, white-tailed deer, have gone down by more than 90% in the Everglades, while python sightings have been on the rise. Without any natural predators in North America, pythons rule the roost. But the slippery serpents may have met their match in Big Cypress. Research teams between 2000 and 2009, more than 1,000 pythons were captured and removed from Everglades National Parks. Just a quick update for all our South Florida residents since we visited and doing the Grand Rising show from sunny South Florida. Salute to everybody that's tuning in. Pulling up the next couple of stories to get this moving. Be back with you in less than 30 seconds. I'm pulling up some more American Indian news right now for you. And here it says analysis of the world's oldest natural mummies reveal mysteries of American tribes. Genetic study of human remains from from across Americas, documented prehistoric migration, and helps return contested body to its people. It says a massive study of ancient remains spanning 2 continents has revealed the movements of the first people to colonize the Americas, they say. Scientists sequenced the genomes of 15 ancient Americans from across North and South America, six of which were more than 10,000 years old. Among the specimens examined were remains from a Brazilian site called Lagoa Santa, the most ancient bodies found in the Patanga, and the world's oldest natural mummy from Spirit Cave in Nevada. Using the evidence, which stretched from Alaska to Chile, researchers were able to demonstrate the astonishing speed at which people colonized the region. After they diverged from their ancestors, here they go again, y'all, conducting DNA analysis, the scientists were also able to conclusively prove that the Spirit Cave mummy was also related to Native Americans living today in Nevada. And that's the update they had on that. Just ran across it real quick. Let's see what else we got breaking up in other news. Another news is rising. Grand Rising of Brittany Davis, Luis Miller, everybody else.
Mic check.
Copy Indio, Grand Rising. What up, No Sellout? Everything good?
No, I'm just making sure it's me that's choppy. I think I hear you choppy a little bit.
It's probably on your end. I'm listening to the playback on the other end. I'm coming out clear. Pulling up some more stories for this rising. Pulling up another fresh story. Loading right now. I have an article this rising on the schools teaching false American Indian history. We'll read through this real quick. It says, in February, a stare down between a Native American man beating a drum and a white teenager in a MAG hat caused a national stir outside the Lincoln Memorial. 3 years ago, President Trump began calling Senator Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. And 10 years ago, Leslie Locklear, a member of the Lumbee and Waccamaw Siouan tribes, was a freshman at UNC Chapel Hill. Shout out Waccamaw. Chapel Hill. Her classmates asked if she lived in a teepee. As a younger Native woman, I spent countless hours explaining myself and my race. She said it was both frustrating and exhausting to have the same conversation in every class with every new group of people for countless semesters. From Locklear's freshman year to today's recent headlines, general confusion about Native American culture and history remains. Locklear said her peers' comments were the fault of American public school system that doesn't teach the roles of American Indians in any accurate way. And some education experts see long-term problems with glossing over American Indian history, starting in elementary school. Not only is it not accurate, there is a significant portion of information missing, said Locklear, now the program director for the First Americans Teacher Education Program at UNC Pembroke. Native Americans compose about 1% of the U.S. population, they say. American Indian / Alaskan Native residents make up 1.8% of North Carolina's population as of 2014. NC was one of only 15 states to have 100,000 or more people from this group. When a voice is so small, it's very easy to overlook it. I'm finna say it again. When a voice is so small, it is very easy to overlook it. Kaylee Trevathan, who teaches social studies in Wake County, thinks her first and second grade students aren't getting much information about American Indian life and history, even though they could handle it. I don't think that. You know, it's the best teaching practice to be reading and sharing literally with your young kids. Let's rephrase that. Literally with your young children. That pretty much just paints this happy-go-lucky picture of Native American lives, she said, because this is not what happened. According to the North Carolina State Board of Education, teachers are required to teach changes in American Indian life before and after European exploration in the 4th and 8th grades. But Locklear said this leads primarily to almost exclusively discussion of the Trail of Tears. Some educators say what's taught is whitewash. Christopher Scott, an assistant professor at UNCCH and member of the Lumbee tribe, said that the classroom instruction enforces that the world began with Christopher Columbus. We didn't teach the kids that a Holocaust happened in our country, to the natives, that we were here, Scott said. The Thanksgiving story, they said. When she was a child in kindergarten in Charlotte, Erin Stacks learned about Thanksgiving by dressing up and joining her fellow Indian and Pilgrim classmates to peacefully eat a meal together. They held hands and broke bread, learning that the Indians and Pilgrims were allies who shared knowledge and thrived together. This rendition of Thanksgiving story has been played out for decades, but it glosses over the true relationship between indigenous people and pilgrims. Today, as a senior at UNCCH, Stacks has seen improvements in her peers' education of Native culture, but there are still glaring gaps of knowledge. You can ask people, when did blacks in our nation receive the right to vote? When did women receive the right to vote? People know these things, she said, but you ask someone, when did Native Americans receive the right to vote, and people don't know that it was in 1924 because it's not taught as intensely in our school system. That's the end of that. So basically, they were having complaints on what's being taught in schools about our history and what should be taught about our history in schools. I mean, that's something that we have always talked about, dealing with our history and what we do. Everyone out there, if you can hear my voice, press a 1, because I'm getting things, everybody asking is the audio on. Just want to double check, because I hear myself coming back through all the local devices around me, so I want to check in y'all areas. Are y'all having any problems with the sound coming back to you? Let me know. Give me a 1 if you can hear it clear. Give me a 2 if you can't. Grand Rising, TMH, Grand Rising. Just checking the audio real quick. Can I get 1s from the chat from people who listening so I can make sure it's still on? Is that better? 1 2 1 2. That's what's up, Durant. Just let us know what we can do to help you get that out there. Even if you want to post it or do a show about it or build about it, let us know. Pulling up the next story. Give me 15.
Mic check, mic check. Mic check,
1 2
mic
1
check.
2.
Alright, I'm at a. Alright, I'm at a.
Yeah, you starting to break up now. Pulling up the newest stories.
Breaking up.
No, you sound better now. Oh, you said I was breaking up because I wasn't even talking. I got another upbreaking story that just came across. Sorry it's taking a while. Like I said, reporting remotely from Fort Lauderdale, trying out some new things. It says deadly drug-resistant fungus could be next global threat. This was released at 7:21 a.m. It says a powerful superbug is spreading in hospitals all around the world, and it's emerging as a serious global health threat. The new superbug, what is it? Well, it says Candida auris is a fungus that is getting health experts nervous because not only because it's drug resistant, but also because it is fast acting and it can kill a person as quickly as 90 days. What makes C. auris particularly alarming is its tenacity. While it doesn't spread person to person, CDC warns that this fungus lingers on the skin and surface for a prolonged period of time, so that any sitting can be infecting for a long time. Wow. When an elderly man was found in the hospital to be infected in the Mount Sinai Hospital in Brooklyn, he died within 90 days. However, tests showed that the invasive fungus was everywhere inside the room, from the bed to the doors and the walls to everything else inside, according to the Gulf News. Part of the reason for the fungus tenacity is because it is impervious to drug treatments. Although there are three different antifungal drug classes, most known strains are resistant to at least one drug. One third are resistant to two drugs, and a number of strains resistant to three drugs. This means existing options for infected patients are incredibly limited. What's happening now? Nearly half of the patients who are infected with the CRS died in 90 days. Individuals with weakened immune systems are peculiarly at risk of the CRS. These include infants, elderly people, smokers, diabetes, autoimmune disease patients, among others. As such, hospitals are vulnerable, especially with the fungus' ability to last on surfaces for long times. Healthy people within immune systems in top shape are believed to be in very low risk of getting an infection, according to Forbes. However, there's no telling what lies in the future as the fungus evolves and spreads. It's especially worrying since the fungus is spreading all over the world with record incidents in the United States, United Kingdom, Spain, Japan, South Korea, India, South Africa, Kuwait, Colombia, Venezuela, and Pakistan. As of March 29th, there have been 587 confirmed clinical cases of CRS infection in the United States, according to the CDC. It is the creature from the Black Lagoon, Dr. Tom Chiller, who is the head of the fungal branch at the CDC, describes to Gulf News. It bubbled up and now it's everywhere. And that was the end of that story right there. We have another one that's popping up locally from here in Fort Lauderdale on grassroots efforts to raise awareness of rising sea levels. It says South Florida is at the forefront of the climate crisis, from sunny day flooding to rapidly intensifying hurricanes and toxic red tide. South Floridians have seen it all. How we respond to the climate crisis is the most defining question of our time. The UN International Government Plan on Climate Change and the Federal National Climate Assessment have relayed to the significance of the climate crisis and the urgency for the world, our nation, and Florida to take action to work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The science is loud and clear. Our time is running out. We have 12 years to reduce carbon pollution and prevent the worst impacts of climate change. So why aren't we acting? It feels like we are in a standstill, with folks being all for climate action and those that won't even utter the word climate change unless climate is a hoax. This only furthers the growing divide among Americans. Sadly, this comes at the extreme detriment of working Americans who are focused on solving problems, who need another way to discuss issues that don't devolve into turf wars and false outrage. And climate change is perhaps the best example of a problem almost entirely consumed by the argument instead of the issue. A new way of communicating is needed. I'm thrilled to say a local Miami artist may have discovered a way to raise the issue. Miami Flair Leave It to Miami. Critically acclaimed environmentalist artist Xavier Quatada is using art as a platform to raise awareness about raising sea levels and to engage South Florida communities to take action towards solving top climate changes. Quatada uses what he calls social engaging art to make bold statements. Where was I at? Sorry about that, y'all left it off. Said, I'm thrilled to say a local Miami artist may have discovered a way to raise the issues with Miami Flair to Leave It to Miami. Critically acclaimed environmental artist Xavier Quatada is using art as a platform to raise awareness about rising sea levels and to engage South Florida communities to take action towards solving top climate issues. Quatada uses what he calls socially engaged art to make bold statements about the inevitable of sea level rises. He repurposed campaign yard signs which are symbolic of the political divide in our country. to depict rising sea levels and the impending risk of South Florida homes. Residents of the village of Pinecrest have been working together since February in what we're calling the Underwater Homeowners Association at Hibiscus Gallery in Pinecrest. The Underwater HOA offers a space for residents to come together to collaborate on solutions to climate issues impacting their community. As a group, the Underwater HOA discusses issues of sea level rise, the upcoming vote on the Pinecrest Water Initiative, and ways they can use art and educational tools to engage the community with the Underwater HOA. That's what's up, y'all. A story reported by Aboriginal sister down in South Florida who works for the Sun Sentinel by the name of Olivia Need. Shout out and salute for that we do have Aboriginal brothers and sisters stepping in places and reporting on stories that we're doing in our neighborhoods. So just wanted to give a little shine to the artist and the story writer. Give me 1 second while I pull up another story that's rising. As y'all melodate on what it is that, how y'all feel about the stories that's rising. Sorry about that, y'all. I was trying to get the camera set up so I can get some sunny shots for the community today. So giving them some time to get done. Hopefully we get some live video from the beach and Aboriginals doing what they do out here in sunny South Florida this rising. Got a new story from Copper Indio. It says, real or artificial? Tech titans declare AI ethics concerns. The biggest tech companies, want you to know that they're taking special care to ensure their use of artificial intelligence to shift through mountains of data. Analysis phases or built virtual assistants doesn't spill over to the dark side. But their efforts to assure concerns that their machines may be used for nefarious ends have not been universally embraced. Some skeptics see it as mere window dressing by corporations, more interested in profit than what's in society's best interest. Ethically, AI has become a new corporate buzz phrase. Slap on internal review communities, fancy job titles, research projects. Give me 1 second and I hit the little thing on it. Bring it back up. Say, but their effort to some skeptics to see it more window dressing. Ethically, AI has become a new corporate buzz phrase. Okay, we done been to that point. I had to refresh it. Sorry about that. But how much substance lies behind the increasingly public ethics campaign? And who gets to decide which What technical pursuits do no harm? I don't know why this story want to keep jumping on me this rising. I'm going to reset it. Give me a second. Okay. But how much substance lies behind the increasingly public ethics campaign? Who gets to decide what technological pursuits do no harm? Google was hit with both questions when it formed a new board outside advisors in late March to help guide how it uses AI in products. But instead of winning over potential critics, it sparked internal rancor. A little more than a week later, Google bowed to pressure from the backlash and dissolved the council. The outside board fell apart in stages. One of the board's 8 inaugural members quit within days. Another quickly became the target of protests from Google employees who said her conservative views don't align with the company's professed values. As thousands of employees called for the removal of Heritage Foundation President Kay Coles James, Google disbanded the board last week. It became clear that in the concurrent environment, the council can't function as we wanted. The company said in a statement, that environment is one increasing concern that the corporate AI ethics campaign lacks teeth. I think Google's decision reflects a broader public understanding that ethics involves more than just creating an ethic board without any institutional framework to provide for accountability. AI researcher Ben Wagner said, Google's original intuitive fell into a tech industry trend, what Wagner calls ethnic washing, which he describes as a superficial effort that's mostly a show for the public or lawmakers. It's basically an attempt to pretend like you're doing ethic things and using ethics as a tool to reach an end, like avoiding regulation, said Wagner, an assistant professor at the Vienna University of Economics and Business. It's a new form of self-regulation without calling it that by name. Big companies have made an increasingly visible effort to discuss their AI efforts in recent years. Microsoft, which often tries to position itself as an industry leader of ethics and privacy issues, published its principles avoiding developing AI, released a short book that discussed the implications of technology and has called for some government regulations of AI technologies. The company's president even met with Pope Francis earlier this year to discuss industry ethics. Amazon recently announced it is helping fund federal research into algorithms, fairness, and safe cell employees, an architect for ethical AI practice as well as chief ethical and human use officers. It's hard to find a brand name tech firm without similar incentives. It's a good thing that companies are studying the issue and seeking perspective on industry ethics, said Oren Izzel, CEO of Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence, a research organization. But ultimately, he said, a company CEO is tasked with deciding what suggestions on AI ethics to be incorporated in business decisions. I think overall it's a positive step rather than a fig leaf, he said. That said, the proof is in successful implications. I think the jury is still out on that. The impact artificial intelligence can have on society has never been more clear, and companies are reacting to studies about the power of recommendation, algorithms, and gender bias as AI. But as Google attempt shows, discussing the issue in public eye also invites public scrutiny. Google employees have had more success than other tech workers at demanding change at their company. The internet search behemoth dropped a contract with the Pentagon after employees pushed back on ethical implications of using the company AI technology to analyze drone video. And after more than 2,400 Google employees signed a petition calling for James to be taken off the board, Google scrapped the board altogether. Employees said James has made past comments that were anti-trans, anti-immigration, and should not be on ethics panels. The Heritage Foundation did not respond to a request for the comment. Google had also faced dissent from its chosen council members, Alessandro Astique, a professor at Carnegie Mellon University, announcing on Twitter he was declining the invitation. He wrote that it was devoted to grappling fairness and inclusion in AI. But this was not what it says, AI, but this was not that. The right forum for me to engage in this important work, he declined to comment further. One expert who had commented to saying on the council is Jonah Bryson, associate professor in computing at the University of Bath. A self-described liberal, she said before the dissolution that it makes sense to have political diversity on the panel, and she didn't agree with those who think it's just for a show. I just don't think Google is that stupid, Bryson said. I don't think that they're just to have a poster on the wall. She said, however, the companies like Google and Microsoft do have a real concern about liability, meaning that they make sure that they show themselves and the public that they're tried their best to build products the right way before releasing them. It's not just the right thing to do, it's the thing they need to do, said Bryson. Said she was hopeful Google actually wanted to brainstorm hard problems and should not find another way to do so after the council dissolved. It's unclear what Google would do next. The company said it's going back to the drawing board and would find other ways of getting outside opinions. Wagner said now would be the time for Google to set up ethics principles that include commitments they must stick to, external oversight, and other checkpoints to hold them accountable. Even if companies keep setting up external boards to oversee AI responsibility, government regulations will still be needed, said Liz O'Sullivan, a tech worker who left AI company over the company's work in the Pentagon. Project Maven, the same project that Google dropped after its employees protested. O'Sullivan is wary of boards that make suggestions that companies were under no legal obligation to stick to. Every company of that size that states their interest in having some sort of oversight that has no ability or authority to restrict or restrain company behavior seems like they're doing it for the press of it all, she said. And that's the end of that story. Basically, they're discussing the ethics on artificial intelligence right now. And they're discussing in forming communities, is it real or is it artificial? Doing the thinking and programming of men and women of every day. I mean, so what y'all think about that? You having AI systems now in charge of your everyday functions. Where you go, how you do. I mean, they've been going that way for a minute. They're already talking about self-driving cars, self-driving drones. I mean, y'all get at me at the chat. Let me know what y'all think about that. Facts, Carpet Indio. You hit it right on the head. The CEO gets to decide just how ethical the moves these companies are making will be. So who's making the decision on what's right and wrong? Come on, let's talk about it. Let's hear it. Let's go. Yeah, the rant. We gotta get together. The rant. Make sure you take down Auchtoctones Assembly at gmail.com. Again, Auchtoctones Assembly at gmail.com. You'll see the name up on the screen. Email us the rant so we can start working on some of these ideas. And that goes for everybody in this community. One or two people at all. It's going to take us all with our ideas and concepts coming together. And we can build anything. can't. I gotta plug in. I gotta plug in. The computer about to die. TMH, Grand Rising.
How's everything going?
Going all right, going all right. On A1A, setting up these stuff to show some footage and stuff on the beach. Y'all bear with me for a second.
Alright. What's the temperature like up there?
Hot and sweaty. And that was at 7 a.m. this rising.
Hot and sweaty. It couldn't just be one. Jay Susquehanna says he uses his AI for crypto, and he has a trading bot. Michael George said that AI has never been in our best interest because they have cars that target brown folks. For collisions, a car, yeah, that's interesting. Also, think about AI just another way to keep what's the best way to put it? From see what else we can get on chat.
Grand Rising, I'm back. Just had to check some things real quick.
No worries. So you were saying it's hot and sweaty in Miami.
Yep, hot and sweaty, early rising, and bright.
No, I can deal with the bright. I think I can deal with the hot fast ones.
Like I said, I forgot how fast it heat up down here.
I think that there wouldn't be that much of a difference just being in one state of much one state as far as temperature goes. Grand Rising Universal Earth. Hope you experience not all
Grand Rising Universal Herb. No, me, I ain't. I don't have time for the AI. Because if it's artificial intelligence, who programming it? It's still taking somebody's program.
no, most definitely. But they're entertainment and education. So I'm just before they start
No, Tim, you breaking up pretty bad.
I can see if I can come back again.
Mic check, mic check.
Mic check. Can you hear me? Okay. I had to get off the Wi-Fi, or the Wi-Fi, as some people call it. Good. Now, but like I, yeah. No, but like I was saying, the it's just a matter of time if they have not already done it. They're using artificial or might be you know something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Peace, Grandma, Grand Rising.
Peace, peace. But if you think about it, they've been trying to implement so-called AI. I mean, me personally, I just take it as another form of control. Michael George, Grand Rising. No, we making a couple of changes, Pamela Hall. That's all. So making some new implements to the system, taking some out, finding out what works more effectively and what doesn't. Peace, Pamela Hall. Now just making a couple of adjustments real quick. I can't. Don't worry about it. Trying to keep it a clear signal. Background, I'm not just getting super loud.